Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give just a minute or two to allow everybody to get in who plans to attend. Hope you're all doing well this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. About another minute or so. We were talking at the earlier session before we got started. Welcome to March. You survived February. Now we're on to March. The weather is starting to turn a little bit nicer, a little cooler today, but hopefully the weekend sort of excited you about what is coming with the weather changes. So time changes in less than 2 weeks now. We get a little more daylight at the end of our day. So things are looking up. It is 3:30 and Valerie will continue to admit folks as they come into the waiting area, the waiting room, the whatever that's called in Zoom. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We had a town hall session this morning. Some of you may have been on for that. And if you are coming back to see if I say the same thing over again, I probably am not going to repeat exactly because I don't know what I said. It's all stream of consciousness. I have a few notes, but want to talk through some of the same issues, same concepts, same thoughts at least. But I'll tell you what I told students for years and years in any of my classes. If they asked me to repeat myself, I'd say I can't, but I can explain it in another way. I can say the same thing in another way for you. So that's really what each of these sessions will be. We ask you all to submit your questions if you had questions, and we got a number of questions. And I'm going to go over some themes today, but what I'm not going to do is to go over the answers to the specific questions because we can do that in writing much more thoroughly, efficiently, effectively than going over the answers. But I will go over sort of themes with you, at least that I'm reading in some of the questions, and kind of address those in broad strokes, if you will. But let me kind of start and kind of lay out the history of where we've been, talk a little bit about where we are and where we are going and where I think we might need to go. So first things first, though, I do want to reiterate, and hopefully you've heard me say this before. If you haven't, I apologize. I've certainly said it to everybody who would listen. I think you've all done a great job of trying to maintain some normalcy during this last year. And yes, folks, it has been a year since we were seeing the first cases in North Carolina, and we were hypothesizing how long this was going to last. And I don't know that anybody, some of you may have, but certainly I didn't see us being a year later having the same conversations. But here we are, and we're not over this yet. Obviously, we have some positive signs that I'll talk a little bit about, but we also have some warning signals, warning signs that are on the horizon that we need to pay careful attention to. But you've all done a great job. We've maintained to the best of our ability. You have reinvented the college. We've had staff members that have been here consistently throughout our time of COVID. We've had faculty members that have not had any time to be working from home for the most part because they are doing face-to-face courses. Many of us have been here and not teleworking. Some of you are still teleworking. So we have this mix and match and hodgepodge of what's going on campus. But we have reinvented many of the things that we did and we needed to do. So we've done a tremendous amount of work over the last year, and you all deserve a tremendous amount of credit for that because it didn't happen in the boardroom, and it certainly didn't happen in a thought process. It happened where you are in the activities that you've been engaged in with the students and the colleagues that you've been engaged with. So thank you all for that, and I appreciate those efforts. But as we think about where we've been over the last year, we have done a tremendous amount of job a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous job, but we still have a long way from where we would like to be. We are a long way from where we'd like to be. Namely, we are about 6% down with credit enrollment. And that was for the fall. We're a little bit more than that, 7.5 in the spring, if my numbers are accurate in my memory. And even more than that in continuing education because of the restrictions that we've had to abide by because of a number of reasons. That's about average across the state. You know, for a while I was thinking we were doing about better than average, and we certainly have done better than many colleges, but we are about average in North Carolina, a little worse than some other states, and a lot better than still other states. We know of colleges in the United States that have been as much as 20–30% down. We also have colleges in North Carolina that have grown in response to the COVID pandemic. How they've done that, they are certainly not in the majority, but 4 or 5 have either stayed flat or grown during this process. So we're about in the middle, we're average. But let's kind of talk a little bit about where we were and where we are financially, maybe even emotionally over the course of this roller coaster year. So coming into March last year, we obviously were aware of COVID. We were aware that there was an issue nationally that we were seeing internationally, and nationally we were having issues. And I think the first case in North Carolina in the Raleigh area was about the 1st of March, because I was there for one of my last in-person, actually probably my last in-person meeting, and several of you were there as we were looking at some activities that the college would be engaged in. And then the world changed very, very, very quickly between March and April. And of course, we sent many of you home, and some of you have continued to primarily telework, faculty, that is, in that time. And we have reinvented the college. So as we look at that, though, because of the growth that we sustained the year before, coming into this budget year, we were able to weather the storm very nicely because we had about $1 million in growth money that we had earned because of the growth. As you all know, the funding for North Carolina is in arrears. So what we do this year is going to affect next year's budget. What we did last year affects this year's budget. If I were still in South Carolina or we went in other states, if we would have had a 6% decline, we'd have had an immediate 6% decline in tuition revenues, and we would have had to make some significant changes. And if we would have been 30% down, we'd have had to make a 30% change. And of course, you probably know that involves personnel when you get into some deep, deep cuts like that. But we've gone through this year without significant impairment for the budget because of the way that we're funded. That being said, though, the $1 million increase that we got this year, we've already lost it for next year. It's gone. So thankfully, we didn't put that into a lot of recurring cost, although you will recognize that we just approved, the Board of Trustees just approved a bonus for you all, which will be paid out soon, and then also an adjustment to the staffing salary plan and an adjustment to faculty and staff salaries that have an ongoing price tag that is not insignificant. So we have to absorb that into the ongoing budget, not the bonus, but the pay raise. Other colleges have certainly done a bonus. Some are still doing a bonus before we get into the 4th quarter. And we'll see how that all plays out. But few that I know of, actually, I don't know of any other that did an actual pay raise this year. So we are in the minority with respect to that. So we want to make sure that, you know, we are taking our resources and using them effectively, but I'm very thankful to the Board of Trustees for approving that increase because you all deserve it. We haven't adjusted salaries the way we should have with staff, and certainly we wanted to make sure that faculty got some adjustment as well. So that's a positive thing. I'm going to sound like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde today. I'm going to give you a positive and I'm going to slap you around with a negative. So, you know, it's just the reality of the world in which we find ourselves, that for every positive, there's at least one negative that we can point out that we have to be mindful of. So budgetary concerns are certainly an issue going forward. We've not affected full-time staff or faculty positions. We are still hiring. We haven't put a hiring freeze in place. None of those things, because we are still good for the budget. But we've got a couple of things that we've got to be mindful of, and just going to lay it out for you all. We can't take another year like we had this year. We are going to really have some impact going forward if we don't get back on track a little bit. While I am proud of the work that we've done, and we've done a good job, we've maintained an average enrollment, but that's going to have a long-term effect on a couple of things. Budget, we've talked about briefly. We also know that we're losing first-time students across the community college system. This is not North Carolina alone, but it's community colleges in North Carolina seeing this, and so are we. But we're also losing minority students. So our African-American male students predominantly are going away. They're not coming to community colleges. And so we're having a disparate impact on some of the students that we need to serve and that we are going to make an emphasis about serving. So first-time students going away is going to be impactful down the road, and certainly we don't want to leave any population behind. So we got to make sure that we are providing the resources, the learning modalities, the methodologies that will help us to reach the student body that we need to reach. So we've got to be mindful of what the communities need, and we've got to be able to provide that in a very positive way going forward, so that we can rebuild enrollment, not just because we're enrollment minded. If we maintained enrollment because of retention, that's great, but retention is fantastic. We've got to have students enrolling though. We've got to make sure that we're getting there. And we only lost, and I'm going to may call on Dean to make sure I'm saying this correctly, but we only had about a 1% decrease in success rate for the year, for fall to fall, I believe it was. And that's positive. That's a very positive thing. But as Dean pointed out to me, and I think it's an interesting data point, but if we take the decrease in enrollment and the decline in success rate, we have 500 fewer course success statistics. 400 course, I'm not saying that correctly, Dean, help me.
So exactly what you just said leads us to, we had 500 fewer successful course completions.
That's what I meant to say. So when you think about that, we did pretty well, but we're not exactly going to change the world with that dynamic. I think about that starfish story. Who are you? You run across all the starfish on the beach, and somebody throws them back one at a time, and the pessimist says, well, you're not gonna affect them all. Well, no, but I can affect one at a time. I can affect the ones I can affect, and I can help the ones that I can reach. And we've reached fewer folks, and we've had less positive impact just because of that. So we need to be mindful of that. I don't think we can afford to continue down that road. So again, positive and negative. One positive that's come out of all this is we've learned a lot, haven't we? We've learned what to do, what not to do, how to do it, how to do online more effectively, how to do hybrid, certainly how to have these types of meetings through Zoom without everybody forgetting to mute themselves. And I mean, we have come a long way in a year. We're not perfect, but we've come a long way. Now, the downside of that is every other college has come a long way. That's good for students, it's bad for competition. Because now, if we are predominantly online, and we decided we wanted to stay predominantly online, there are 3,000 universities, colleges in the United States, roughly 1,200 community colleges. Guess what? Every one of them got better at the same things we got better at: serving students at a distance, being online, doing online courses, doing online meetings, doing online recruitment, doing online financial aid counseling, doing online, you name it. So the competition got more fierce during this time. So then you start to ask yourself, what separates us? Are we ever going to be able to compete with a Western Governors or Southern New Hampshire, or a community college in Arizona that is all online or wants to eat our lunch online. If our only claim to fame is we got better online, I'm not sure that's going to cut it. We're not going to have the resources that some of these other colleges have. We're just not. We're not that big, not that wealthy. So it connects to our strategic planning sessions that we've been having in my mind, because one of the threads that I think I hear, well, I do hear with regularity from those sessions and from other things that people are saying, is one of the things that sets us apart is that we are personable. We are there. We are somebody they can connect to. We're somebody that they can see at the grocery store. Some of them grew up with some of you. So, we have these connections that people recognize as being part of the community. That's our competitive advantage going forward. We have got to maintain that competitive advantage, and we're going to be better at online. We're going to be better at hybrid. We're going to be better at serving our students at a distance, but I don't think we can hang our hat on that alone. And, part of this, I have to admit to you, is a gut. I hear what people say, but I also know that for us to maintain what we need to be able to do for our 7-county service area, they're going to rely on us as being their neighbors, their friends, their family members, the college that they recognize that has been here serving them for 60 years. And we're going to need to maintain some kind of constancy in that. So other things that are happening, budget, again, some positives, some negatives. You may know that we have some, the college presidents and the Association of Community College Trustees for North Carolina put together a consensus budget ask, if you will, the priorities, legislative priorities that we want to advocate for the year. And one of those is stabilization funds. I told you all we lost about $1 million. I'm talking we'll lose $1 million. I'm talking in round numbers here just to make it easier. The $1 million we got, we're going to lose in the next budget cycle. A lot of colleges are losing money. So what we're asking for is about 61 million. That number is actually going to go up. I've got a meeting that will start in about 14 minutes. I'm not going to make it, obviously, for the presidents, but I will make it to the end of that. And then part of that, they're going to talk about what the latest budget number is going to be that we're going to ask for. So we're going to ask for $61+ million for stabilization funds to allow us to not get back to 100%, but to get us back to some percentage so we don't lose $1 million next year. We will lose $750,000 even with the formula, even if we get that from the legislators. I'm telling you right now, I don't think that's going to happen. We might, but the reception is kind of chilly to that in Raleigh, partly because the legislators know that we've got federal funds, and we do have federal funds that we can use to plug some gaps, which is why we're in good shape even going forward into this coming budget year. But we have to be mindful that if we are only plugging gaps, we won't be able to do anything transformational with the technology in the classroom. We've got a group of folks, and Dr. Carter's reached out to faculty on several occasions through several mechanisms to try to make sure that we put some better technology in the classroom so that we can make sure that we are positioned for whatever comes next and whatever COVID or hurricanes or whatever throw at us in the future, and that will allow us to continue to use the Zoom technology, distance learning, hybrid, better in our courses, in our classrooms. But I don't think that stabilization fund is going to be well received. It doesn't seem to be well received in Raleigh right now. Who knows? They do love us in Raleigh, though, us being North Carolina. Community colleges. And so there might be some things that are very positive that come out of the current legislative session. One of the main priorities for the consensus agenda that we have going forward is a pay raise for faculty and staff at community colleges. You may know that we haven't had a budget since I've been in North Carolina. For those of you who are, who are keeping score, we also didn't have COVID before I got here, and we don't have a budget, so I'm not sure what that says about me having arrived here. Hopefully you can disconnect those from your mind, but we haven't had a budget. Bless Susan's heart. I keep asking her 1,001 questions about how things should be normally done, but there is no normal for the budget. So we're kind of limping along with some interesting dynamics. So we haven't had a budget. We haven't had a pay increase, even though North Carolina state employed, not NC State, but the state employees of North Carolina have had pay increases. So we asked for 5%, and that's actually being pretty well received in Raleigh right now. Now, you just got a pay increase here. That was local, though. This would be a state increase on top of everything else that we have done. I will tell you that there are two, I heard the other day, there are two bills that have been proposed that would give North Carolina community college employees a 7% pay raise. Whether that goes through, I don't know. I wouldn't go out and write your checks quite yet, but that's a positive thing that they're actually discussing giving us more than we have asked for, because they recognize the importance of the community college system. They recognize that we have continued to fall behind, not only our colleagues in North Carolina, but also in other community college systems across the US. So it is not a positive number to see our salaries of our faculty and staff compared to the salaries of faculty and staff in the other 50 systems, 49 systems across the United States. So, we're trying to shame the legislature into recognizing that they have not really provided the funding necessary to pay our faculty and staff what they deserve. So that's positive. Another positive thing, I think, is that when we started looking at economic indicators back last year in about May, I think this number was done. There was a prediction that we were going to lose tax revenues. We were going to lose income as a state, and the sky is falling. But we ended up about $4.1 billion ahead of projections as a state. That's good. Billion with a B. But in talking to some of our legislators locally and hearing what others are hearing from their legislators, there's not a big rush to go out and spend all that money. And part of what they are referring to in that is that we have put a fairly sizable rainy day fund aside in North Carolina, which means North Carolina is much better positioned to weather the storm that we've been in and that we will continue to be in for some months to come. They're better able to weather that than other states. But there's $4.1 billion additional dollars that they weren't really planning on. So, it's who knows where that goes. They're not going to spend it all. We would like for them to spend some of it on community colleges and through stability funds or pay raises or other things that we have as priority lists. I won't go through all of those priorities with you, but those are some main ones so that they all have a positive, negative slant. One of them is significant. I will mention one other. One is a significant amount of money for infrastructure and support for cybersecurity issues. You all probably know that we've put a lot of money that we got federal funds through the state into some infrastructure, increased our bandwidth on our campuses and access points, and we're going to have parking lot to parking lot Wi-Fi coverage. So when you get on one of our campuses, you will be able to connect to Wi-Fi and have a lot of capabilities. So that's going to help us into the future. But we also know that about 8 of our colleges, sister colleges, have been hit by some form of ransomware in the last few months. The latest is CPCC, who has been all but shut down over the last 2 or 3 weeks as they are trying to get back online. This is a months-long endeavor of all hands on deck, and let's work on this. But their faculty and staff have not been able to do their work. They've been, I don't know if they're back on campus now, but for a week plus, they were told to stay home and stay off campus and work to the best of their ability. Telephones didn't work on campus, email didn't work, learning management system didn't work. You name it, it didn't work. So we are in that same boat. We've got to make sure that we maintain some security and we put some resources into that. And we're going to have significant resources going forward. So any dollars we get, we've got multiple places we could spend them, I guess is the bottom line there. We can never plug all the holes with cybersecurity, but we've got to plug the major ones and do what we can do to make sure that we're safe. Wayman stays up at night, and for some reason, I always get these alerts about what's going on at other colleges at night or on the weekend. So I always shoot Wayman a text that will, yeah, you see Wayman's picture pop up there. He always has an interesting background for me to try to guess. But I keep Wayman busy on the weekends and at nights worrying about what's happening at other colleges, and he worries about all that already. So significant expenses ahead of us just to keep things running and keep these crazy hackers and cybersecurity bandits at bay. So that's just kind of where we are, where we've been. Now let's talk a little bit about where we're going and why. You know, in my gut, in my heart of hearts, as I said to you at the beginning of this meeting, I believe, I don't think we can afford another year like we've had this year. To some of you are just, you know, a little box on a screen to me, even after 15 months. I've seen you online, but I've not had the pleasure of even having hallway conversations with many of you because we haven't been in the same place at the same time. We have not stopped teaching. We have not stopped working. Our staff has been here. Some staff have not been able to telework because their jobs do not allow that. Our staff over in student support enrollment management, student success enrollment management, have been here seeing students and working the desk and making sure that we have folks coming and going. We've had faculty over in health science and welding and other areas that have really not missed much of a beat. We've done things differently. We've maintained social distancing, but we are here. So, you know, we've got this little caveat. The meeting is the bringing the band back together town hall. What we were going to be working on over the coming weeks and months is bringing us back together. We are going to be mindful of, you know, these other issues that are out there. And I haven't even gotten into the health issues, which I will in a second. But we need to be mindful that we have a position here in this community, and it is serving our 7 counties, being more than just an educational institution. We're a cultural institution to many of them. We are friends, neighbors, family members, and some of them are not coming back to school because they're not going to be doing well online and they miss that interaction. And I'll be honest with you, I miss it too. The last year has not been the year that certainly has drawn me over a 30-year career to a community college. So we've had people working at a distance. We've had people working here, but what the goal is to get back to normal, more normal, not back to where we were. I don't know that we'll ever be 100% back to where we were, but more normal in our course offerings, looking at the times that we have courses, looking at our face-to-face course offerings and hybrid and all of these things. You all know, again, a positive thing, but also a threat. We have 2 new facilities coming online in the next year. Currituck will be ready for programming this fall. Brand new square footage that is going to be fantastic. Several of us took a tour a couple weeks ago. It's going to be wonderful learning space. Dare is actually supposed to be substantially complete this December. So we are going to be in another 35,000 square foot facility in Dare. And of course, they're chomping at the bit, as some of you who are in Dare know. Those people are so excited to have that new facility down next to the downtown of Manio so that we can certainly be a hub for activities in the area. And I'm excited about that too. Last week, we actually met with the Pasquotank Commission here in town, and they were meeting on campus for a planning retreat. And Robin Harris and Jim Davison and I did a presentation and asked them to consider building us another $13.5 million, give or take, expansion to simulation and health science and allied health, and which will free up space to do some additional things here on the Elizabeth City campus. So we've got a tremendous number of projects coming online, and our counties are very, very supportive. But they also, it's going to be a hard sell if we have 3 new facilities in the works and we're not filling up the facilities that we have already. And I will tell you the cynical view in Raleigh and other places is if people need you so badly, you got to provide them a place to go and be there to serve them when they come to you. And I think that's certainly in my mind, and certainly something that we need to be mindful of. Now, looking at the health issues, before I forget, where have we been? We started all this stuff last year. We didn't know what to expect. We now have the 3rd immunization strand that is being sent around. I heard something like 80,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccinations coming to North Carolina. I heard today, and Valerie can correct me because this is secondhand, but the governor and Secretary Cohen, I believe, had indicated that we're #1 in the nation for vaccinating 65-plus-year-olds, at least as a percentage of our folks. Is that right, Valerie? Did I get that right?
Yes, ranked from the Kaiser Foundation.
So we also are somewhere around 1/5 of the adults in North Carolina, I believe is the number, have been vaccinated. You know, I inconvenienced our facilities folks and our security folks and our recruitment folks and all of us on campus early this semester by allowing a number of large vaccination clinics on the Elizabeth City campus. And part of that was to hope that that would help people here get vaccinations faster. And it did work out that way, I think. Some of us were able to get in the first few days because they had, once they thawed that vaccine, they have to use it within a certain amount of time. Others of you have had your vaccinations. When we did a survey a few weeks ago, Ella sent out a survey as we were looking at testing, bringing testing on board, which is another thing that we have done recently. 68% of, I think that number's right, 68% of those of you who responded to the survey, that's not 100% of the people who work here, obviously, but 68% had at least started the vaccination process. So that's pretty good, folks. Comparatively, I still know of some colleges where almost nobody has been vaccinated unless they're 65 and plus. So, and they've been back at work more than we have in some cases. So we really have been pretty good. We've got another county manager that's working with us to get another clinic together. But we are in the priority listing that's coming up in the next week or two. So anybody who wants a vaccination should be able to get one if you haven't gotten one already. And they're showing themselves to be pretty good. In fact, there's a debate nationally now about whether we even need the second shot for a while with some of these, the Pfizer and the Moderna, because they have shown themselves to be much more effective than we might have thought them to be a few months ago. That said, we have different variants out there that could change the game once again. You probably all keep up with the numbers, and certainly I ate, slept, and breathed the numbers for a few months last year, but then I had to remove myself from looking at the numbers every day because that's all I was doing. That's all I could focus on was, you know, how many people were getting COVID, what was happening with the death rate, et cetera, and so forth. But the numbers have been decreasing over the last month or so, which is great because they were historically high. But what we've seen is kind of a leveling out. So we have a number of folks that have been vaccinated. The states are opening back up slowly but surely. People are maybe getting a little more lax with mask wearing and hand washing and other things. So, you know, we're not out of the woods. And we're not going to do anything here that's going to separate us from what we think is safe and what we need to do. But it is time for us to start to ramp up more face-to-face activities on campus. Over the coming weeks and months, you'll see more activities coming out of SSEM so that we bring students back. We're not going to neglect the 3 Ws. We're going to continue to practice those. We're going to look for more activities to bring faculty and staff back to campus and ramping up more of our expectation that folks are on campus more, with the idea that we are back normal, whatever that means, face-to-face in a normal routine in the fall. And we have tried to restart this engine before, and then of course infection rates increased, and we'll just have to keep an eye on it. So we'll continue to move forward in that direction. That's kind of the bringing the band back together. So again, I'm not going to address all of the questions. We're going to send out an FAQ, some follow-up, because I see several questions coming in now, and we'll try to address those in a moment. But the questions that you've asked ahead of time, we're going to try to follow up with an FAQ or some other activity to make sure that you get some answers to those. But let me address some threads that I've seen in questions, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions, make comments as you are inclined to do so. One of the threads I would say in the question is, aren't you concerned for our health? Don't you care for us anymore? That's a Bagwellian paraphrase, and that question wasn't asked specifically. Absolutely. We have done everything that we can think of and then some to make sure that we are safe, and we have been very safe on campus. Many of us have teleworked pretty much every day since worked in the campus every day since last March. We have not teleworked to significant amounts of time. I've only been out of the office a few days teleworking. I had to stay out a few days because of a potential exposure and had no choice but to telework. But for the most part, I am in my office every day, and many of you have been in your offices every day. SSEM folks have been here, our facilities folks, our security folks, and we've not had any, maybe one that I'm aware of, on-campus transmission for the activities here at the campus. So that's a thread. We obviously going to keep watching that. We're going to keep the 3 Ws. We're going to try to make sure that we understand how to do things safely, but that's part of the reason we need you back, so that you can start to look at your classes, teach classes from the course meeting spaces in your offices, so that we can start to put together some additional plans for what we need to do on campus to keep us safe. Another thread I would say is, the technology and using technology, and aren't we going to continue to teach online? Well, we're going to continue to do some online, but I think based on what I just told you a little bit ago, our competitive advantage is not online. We need to do online well, we need to do hybrid well, but we also need to do face-to-face and make sure that we are here to support our students. I don't have any desire to see us be an online-only college. I think we're going to lose out in the end if we try to do that. We are a bricks and mortar institution. We need to make sure that we're serving our students, serving our 7 counties, and making sure that we meet the challenge. And one of those challenges is to do it safely. And so distance, one of the questions earlier today or comments was, we have small rooms in the discipline that I work in, and we're going to have to spread out and do some different things. Absolutely, we are. And that's why we need to get back in here and make sure that we're looking at that and analyzing that and getting the experts, who are those of you who know your disciplines, those of you who work in specific offices, to ensure that we've put the thought processes together, with the plans together, spent the money on things to make that work. Dr. Carter and the rest of the leadership team and I can't sit around and predict what's going to be best for every particular area all the time. It's probably no one size fits all, but we've got to be creative. We've got to look for solutions. I see Sandra is at the center of my screen. I don't know where she is on yours, but our Performing Arts Center has continued to do performances. We've continued to have auditions. We've continued to do some entertainment, cultural activities through all of this, which, folks, has not been done at other performing arts centers. A lot of the art that colleges bring to their communities have been lost over the last 12 months. So our folks have really done a tremendous job. And our student support and enrollment management folks have done a tremendous job. Our campus folks have done a tremendous job of maintaining the presence so that we can serve our students, but serve them safely. So I'm going to stop here because I see a number of questions coming in this afternoon that I didn't see the activity for this morning. So let me open it up. Valerie's monitoring the chat session for me. So I'm not going to try to read all of those, but while she's looking through that, anybody have any comments or questions for the group that you want to verbalize?
Are there going to be seats on campus for the show this weekend?
Unfortunately, no. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Currently, we are restricted to 25 people on campus per the building. And so there are 14 people involved in my cast and crew. So right now, the seats, I am putting 25 people in the building to give my actors as much of an audience as possible. But that currently is by the invitation of our cast and crew at this time. I'm happy to put your name on a wait list, though. If something opens up, I'm happy to let you know.
So that's something that we talked about at the earlier session. We need to look at that and see what we can expand that to going forward. We just have not done that. And obviously the rules continue to change and are getting a little more free. And we certainly hope to get people back sooner rather than later, though, because I know the folks performing, it's hard enough to perform when you have people in front of you, but to have no one in front of you is difficult. That's why I appreciate those of you who actually keep your cameras on during these types of events, because looking at faces is much better for me than looking at a bunch of black screens, blank screens with things. Look at some of you are coming on. I didn't mean to guilt you into that. So, but I love seeing your faces and appreciate you doing that. Valerie, what questions are in the chat?
There's one common thread about safety on campus and I guess enforcement of the 3 Ws, particularly mask wearing with students. How would we handle that?
We're going to, we're going to all have a role in that, just like we would with smoking or some other behavior. We're going to have to remind folks that they are required to wear masks and what the expectation is in your classes, just as you would with any other discipline. When we first had cell phones on campus, we were, who's going to come to the classroom and tell people not to use their cell phones? Well, you are. It's your classroom. So now that's kind of a non-issue, right? Because we've gotten used to it. This is a new thing. And certainly when we need to involve security or disciplinary processes, we have those in place. But we're all going to have to help people understand that these rules are in place to help us all stay safe. And if people won't follow the rules, they don't get to stay here. And we'll take care of it through those mechanisms.
With that, there was a question about whether or not we're going to have a new Maxient thread for reporting noncompliance with safety protocols for students.
Yeah, I think we'll handle that through the behavioral mechanism like we've talked about and done. We've had a couple of things through the year. Remember, we've had students on campus. So our faculty that have been here have had to remind students. I've seen, where's Robin Harris? I don't see her right now, but I've seen Robin walk in the halls and pointing at masks and people not wearing their mask appropriately. And some of you in health science have probably had to do a number of reminders in the hallway and in the parking lots. And so we haven't had this tremendous upswelling of people who refuse to wear masks. They need to be reminded from time to time. They need to be told if they're not doing what they need to do. But if we have an issue, we will certainly put it through Maxient in our disciplinary processes.
There's a question if we have a plan for, have we given thought to graduation for spring, a normal spring graduation?
I think what the thought is that we're not going to have a normal spring graduation because we're a little uncertain about the numbers and everything now. We are going to have a celebration that's in line with what we've done in the past and maybe have more people in the Performing Arts Center. But Chris, do you have any update on that you can provide? Chris Burris?
We haven't made a final decision about how spring graduation will look. I can let you know that May 12th is, we're scheduled to have graduation on the Elizabeth City campus, and then May 14th in Dare, for the Dare campus. And so I think after we have our town hall meetings, we have one more tomorrow, and we have a time to think through and really just look at the feedback that you guys have provided, then that will assist us in making a more informed decision. I do think what we'll be looking at is having graduation in a format that we used in 2020. If we can come into the pact and allow students to bring guests and those types of things, that's our goal. I think we would also be open to how we could do something potentially outside if that was an option. But I think right now, there's so many unknowns and so many variables, and so we don't want to be quick to make a decision that we have to back up from. So we just want to make sure that we have as much information and we can make an informed decision. But hopefully within the next 2 weeks or so, we'll be able to start promoting that and get that out to all of you guys. But it is definitely our plan to celebrate our students. We understand how important it is for our students to be recognized, for their families, as well as for us as COA employees. It's an important milestone, and so we look forward to celebrating.
Thank you, Chris. Other questions?
Sorry, to add back to the graduation, the tech at the Performing Arts Center has been significantly upgraded this year, and we are working on our live stream capabilities. We currently have 3 cameras and a switcher board that allows for a far superior streaming quality than we've had certainly since last May, but even since our previous productions. This one, the show that's coming up this weekend, it features all of this tech, so you can kind of see what we'd be capable of providing as far as a live stream graduation experience.
And certainly we upgraded some technology for the performing arts, but also in mind of how we're using this going forward with graduation or pinning ceremonies, and we may have to make some additional investments as we look at, we may never, well, eventually we will. We may not get back to 1,000 people in the same room this year. I mean, it just, we're not going to be there. We're going to be more normal. We're not going to be back to pre-COVID normal, I think, for a while. Other questions or comments in the chat, Valerie, or anybody else?
There's a couple questions about the delivery of instruction in the fall semester, whether it be dual modality, and whether or not training will be offered on that, and just further details on how instruction will be delivered in the fall.
Yeah, I think that's part of what we're talking about and working on. And that's another reason to try to get people back so that we can continue to train and do some things in classrooms and learn what we need to train people on. We want to upgrade some technologies across the campus, folks. One of the things that would be fantastic if we get this stabilization fund, because then we can spend a lot of the federal funds and transform every classroom on all of our campuses so that we have better technology, better ability to teach in a hybrid, mixed method classroom. But we're going to have to do some training, and we're going to have to get in there and get our hands on it to make sure we understand how that would work. But that's a significant investment, maybe $500,000 worth of technology upgrades that we would like to spend. As soon as we know what's happening with the state budget, I think we'll be freer to do some of that. But it's going to take some retraining, some rethinking of our methodologies.
Dr. Bagwell, can I add something to
Please,
that?
please.
Because I think that I did meet with the deans to talk about this and to talk about this upcoming, or right now, our town hall meeting. And I think that you all know that the schedules have already been created for the fall semester. And within that, there is a lot of variety. And I think that most people are familiar with what we're going to be doing. some of the questions you're asking me about the dual modalities, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. And it does not work in every single classroom. And I totally understand that. The sad part of this message is I have no idea which students are going to be able to come back, how many will be able to come back, and when they will come back, really, because that is our ultimate goal. And if Dr. Bagwell says to me, let's change it all back to face, we will spend the next month fixing it, because I think we do want to be ready for the students and give them the optimal opportunity to learn and to be successful in their classes. The other part of this is that you know, we don't have all the answers. And I think that you need to work with us and to make sure that we are moving towards the right direction, because that direction has changed several times in the last year. And I do want to commend you all again for staying on a path with us. It's not been one path, because we've gone down many paths and had to regroup a lot. And we know that's challenging for people, and it's challenging for students. And I think that we've got to keep that in mind, that we are here for the students. And sometimes the pains that we feel, we should never let the students know we feel them, and do the best we can.
If I can jump in, and I'm not trying to be a thorn in anyone's side with this question about the dual modality. If we feel that our courses are not going to promote success for students in a dual modality structure, can we opt for a Zoom class, a fully Zoom class, rather than half the students in class and half on Zoom? For my literature course, so to speak, those students take pop quizzes if they meet face-to-face, but if they're online, they do journal entries. It would be difficult for me to have face-to-face pop quizzes with half of my students having access to Google at their fingertips. That's my main concern. So if there's some way that we as faculty can say, hey, based on my pedagogy, I don't know if this would really work in this format. Could we possibly work in an all Zoom format? Is that something that we could possibly look into, Dr. Carter?
Of course. And we aren't saying that every class is going to have staggered students or do things in a dual modality. I totally agree with you. There are some classes that work better than others. And as we also talked about, not every room is equipped to be able to function in that dual method. So our goal is to deliver the courses the best we can. And I think your chairs have worked with you and have explained things to you, because you all have changed what you do, every single one of you. And I know you have, and I appreciate that, but we don't know all the answers.
Let me jump in for a second and say, I agree with that answer. I don't want to, there's not a one size fits all response to this. What I think we have to do is find ways, though, to get students back on campus and make it non-optional for them to be on campus, the ones who need it. What I hear from some of you, and I know it to be true, is, and I've heard it from other colleges, so it's not just us. People say, well, I need to be face-to-face, but then you give them the option of being face-to-face or online, and they stop coming to the face-to-face section. If we think something needs to be in a modality, we need to build it so that it works in that modality. And there's not a one size fits all. So I'm not trying to, to hammer a square peg into a round hole, but we know some students need to be on campus for some activities, and we need to build our classes so that it serves the students. And if it works better, and there's not a one size, one answer to every question, Josh. So I appreciate that. And that's why we want that collegial discussion to talk about what we can do and how we can do it and how we make it inescapable for the students, because they're always going to opt for the easy path, but the easy path is not always the good path for them. And it's not always easy. They think it is, but it's not always easier for them if they do what we ask them to do. Russ.
Okay. Let me unmute. Sorry.
You're unmuted.
Okay. Will there be a committee or something? I mean, I've taught hybrid for a long time, dual courses, probably 3 years now since the dean asked me. So I've got some experience with some of that. Will there be a committee to get together? I mean, a lot of things are just really, for me, very easy to fix. It's hard to teach from the podium and then run over to the computer and switch around. But if we had a way to operate dual screens and all from a desk, makes it a cinch. Breakout groups, I can break out the class in one group and online kids in another group. So some of it's overcomable, but I think, I've had 3 years doing this, and for some of Josh's issues, I don't know that could overcome those, but a lot of them, I think those of us that have been doing it hybrid can help. But I'd love to participate as soon as we can start doing some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And what we envision is, we've had a lot of mentoring going on, and that's been a wonderful takeaway for this year. So, we need those collegial discussions and talk about how we can learn from one another. We do want to design the classrooms, though, so that they are multifunctional, and you have dual monitors, and you have the ability to switch and put things up. So that's why we're talking about a significant outlay of monies to upfit our technologies so that we can do some of these things. Because I think what we're learning is going to serve us well going forward, not just online, but how do we bring people in cohorts, have groups at a distance. I know our nursing folks, I don't know if Robin's on here or not, but I know we've learned some things that we can apply in DARE and have students at a distance more than we have in the past. So I know that we've learned some valuable lessons. One of those, though, is not everybody needs to be online all the time. And we knew that, but we've proven that over the last 12 months, I think. Other questions? So Dr. Carter, if you'll follow up with Russ, and I know you're doing some work on that with the classrooms, I think that'd be great to have some subsets of folks.
Yep. And I think that we don't even know yet what we will need to do professional development training on, because as Dr. Bagwell said, we are hoping to do some major renovations over this summer in a number of classes. I don't know that maybe we'll have to call you to help us install these things. It can be a special installation team. Sorry, Wayman. But when you're talking about 50, 60 rooms that need to be updated, that is a giant lift. And we do have to have priorities of which ones are going to be updated first. And we are working on that right now to be able to identify what's going to go in those rooms and how we're going to make sure everybody knows how to use all the equipment. So there's going to be probably some chances for us to do some training before the fall semester starts, I'm going to say. And so please read your emails when I send them to you, because I will be here in August, and hopefully provide some time for you to do some training that you will feel more comfortable with whatever format we're going to go to.
And if we can do some training in the spring, for at least in some model classrooms, I think that's what our desire is to try to jumpstart some of that.
Okay.
And continue it over the summer and then into obviously the fall.
So what I'm going to do, Dr. Bagwell, is ask the deans to identify any people who want to do that training in the spring, so that we can get some jump starts. Otherwise, because every division has different kinds of needs.
Absolutely.
And we will try to help every division.
Great.
Dr. Bagwell, can I chime in here? This is
Please, Lisa.
So I just wanted to mention in Russ's comment that I'm already planning a roundtable discussion with people that are currently teaching, like Russ and some of the video conferencing teachers, because it's some of the same skill sets in that. So I'm looking for that in March. So I'll be in touch with you, Russ, and some others, so we can start having this conversation to talk about the courses in which we teach and how might we overcome some of these situations in which people have mentioned. So that's on the plan.
Looking forward to it.
Thank
Great.
you, Russ.
Just real quick, Lisa, that little demonstration you did for our division meeting with that camera where Laura was wandering around, that was I thought that was great.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rex. We're trying to get some of that technology so that, help you teach in this different modality. So.
Good. Anything else?
There was one comment, two quick comments here. One is, if you do have a question and you type it in the chat, even after this meeting's over, I'll stay on for a little bit if you want to type a question in the chat. We're going to save the chat and address any of these questions that have been typed into the chat after the meeting in these frequently asked questions. And then the second question that did come through the chat was, are we looking at making any adjustments to the summer schedule for classes?
You know, I think we've talked about bringing people back, but not really changing the schedule so much. So, you know, no, not as far as I know, but if we can have students and get them in for learning opportunities or group work or, you know, something safely, I think it would behoove us to start getting people here so that we can test run some of the things that we're talking about putting in place. The last thing we want is everybody to show up for the first time in August and we go, we hadn't thought about that because we didn't have enough people here to make that an issue. So we haven't talked about changing summer schedule. I don't think, Dr. Carter.
No,
But just
and
getting people
typically
back.
in the summer, a lot of our gen ed courses are online.
Yep.
Just because of the nature of the students then. We will have some face-to-face, but probably in the other divisions besides arts and sciences.
Let me tell you what I think there is an opportunity for, and I don't know that I've talked to Dr. Carter about this more recently, and Chris with outreach, but you know, I do think there's probably some opportunities to think about adding some face-to-face, not changing, but maybe adding some additional opportunities for students who have been away at universities, who might not have gotten some credit for some things, some courses in a transient model. So, you know, I think that would be the way I would like to see maybe more activity on the campus in the summers, not changing what we've already got out there, but if we add some additional opportunities, look to some face-to-face, hybrid, whatever the opportunity would be. And I think we might be able to tap into that transient population a little more than maybe we have. We already do a good job of that, but maybe even more of that. Some recovery, we can call it summer recovery, because I guarantee you those freshmen have not been getting as much credit as they might have gotten otherwise.
And that would be in the gen ed area. So I'll
Right.
work with Lisa to brainstorm some of that.
So I've had a couple of strategic planning sessions and some other things where our university partners have said in the last few days, they are really pleased with the quality of the students that come out of our programs and the ones that transfer to the universities. We do a great job, folks, and I think we are going to have more opportunity to reintroduce some students to the classroom. And we can probably, we could probably take advantage of that. We have great faculty, great staff, responsive individuals, and that advantage that we have of being the hometown communities college. So I think we need to discover those opportunities that we might not have taken in full advantage of in the past and see how we can fit a new niche. A new niche means new enrollment. New enrollment means new money. New money means we have fewer worries into the future than we're likely to have otherwise. Economics 101, right, Russ? Other questions or comments? Well, we are past, I think we had an hour scheduled. Is that right? We are past that time. I'll stay on for a little bit. I need to jump off here in a few minutes, though, to get to the tail end of that president's meeting to find out what other craziness is afoot. But if you have questions, type them into the chat. Let us know. Again, we'll be sending more information out. We've got one more town hall tomorrow. If you have nothing better to do and you want to sit through this again and ask your question, then come back. Glad to see you. Some of you did come back. Sandra, I've seen a couple times today. Some of you had to be here, leadership team, but others came back on their own accord. So thank you all for what you do and what you have done, and look forward to seeing where we go. I am very confident that if anybody can figure it out, you guys can figure it out. So we'll get her done. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. All right, I'm gonna jump over to the president's meeting, Valerie.